and so he really didn't know exactly how God was going to deliver. He just knew God was. But then my mind went back even further to where he was anointed to be king, and then right after he was anointed, Daddy sent him back out to the sheep. And I can imagine, just being a typical teenager, he probably went out there towards the sheep, kicking the ground and kind of looking around and mumbling like, I just got anointed king, Dad. Don't you understand? And now you're going to send me back out here to the sheep? Send one of my brothers out there. After all, I'm fixing to be king. But that's how people today would look at it, and I'm quite sure things weren't that different then. And while he was out there, I can just see him thinking to himself about, well, why, God, why? If you're going to anoint me to be king, God, why do I have to be out here with the sheep? Shouldn't I be learning how to do this job? And yet God had him out there. And I think there was a bunch of wisdom on Daddy's part, because had Daddy sent somebody else out there and left David at home, there probably would have been a lot of strife between him and his brothers. He probably would have been running his mouth. His brothers would have hated him. and you know how it is, just kids being kids. And so it was probably a pretty wise thing. Daddy sending him back out there to the sheep. Let him think about all this thing. Let him think about what had happened. Maybe even while he was out there tending the sheep, get a little bit nervous because of the task that laid ahead. He didn't know how to be king. I mean, if it was me, if you were to come up and tell me that I'm going to be the next president of the United States, and God ordained it, I would be like, God, are you sure? You sure you know what you're talking about here? I'm not ready for this. I don't know the first thing about it. I have no clue here, God. I think maybe you got the wrong person. Maybe there's another Ron Fisher somewhere that you were supposed to get. But God doesn't make mistakes.
Amen. And
it would have to be him for something like that to happen for me, because I don't want it. But I got to thinking about that, and David had time to dwell on what was coming up, and I'm quite sure he had a lot of questions for the Lord. And being out there alone, he had a lot of time to think about it. Well, y'all know how it is. The Philistines, they set themselves in array. They got their armies out there, and they gathered them up, and then, of course, the men of Israel, they gathered all their army, and they set themselves on two cliffs, I guess, and then the valley in between. And they got it all up there, and I guess the thing that strikes me here is God's always been on Israel's side. He has worked miracle after miracle after miracle in their midst. He's made a way where it seemed impossible. He has delivered them. They've been delivered from everything. God's provided food. He's provided water. He made their clothes last. He did all this, and they're out there, and Goliath comes out and he starts running his mouth, and they get afraid of one man.
Come on.
And I guess part of me just didn't understand how that could be. I found it rather interesting how how a whole army could be afraid of one man. Because if God had delivered before, why could he not deliver now? And yet, the whole army here of Israel forgot about the victories that they had won in the past. And they sat there and they were afraid. Well, now here comes the wood Jesse, and he hollers at the soon-to-be king. And he says, come here, I want you to take this food after your brothers and see how they're doing. Well, I can imagine again, I thought about the teenagers, and I'd have thought that had it been me or some of most people nowadays, most of the kids, they'd have said, oh, come on, Dad, I don't want to go out there. You already got me out here at the sheep. Now you're wanting me to take food after my brothers? What do I want to do that for? I'm busy. Don't you know I got my own things to do? And he probably didn't even get in a big hurry about coming in when Daddy sent for him. And I can just imagine he gathers all this stuff up. And he's like, okay, Dad, I'm going to do it because I'm going to honor you. And you got to give a guy credit for that. He's going to honor his dad. Dad said to go and do, and so he went to go ahead and do. And he gets out there, and let's see if I can catch up to myself here. Philistines on one side, and their champion came out and told how tall he was and how big he was, and he had this helmet of brass and a coat of mail and how heavy it was, and he had greaves of brass on his legs and a staff, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And he stood and he cried to the armies of Israel, said to them, why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants of Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we might fight together. In verse 12, now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons, and the man went among them for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 oldest sons, they were out there in battle. And David was the youngest, and he was sent out. Verse 15, David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep, and then the Philistine drew near. Jesse said to David, here you go, take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. Vibrating on me. And carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Daddy wanted to know how his boys were doing. And I can imagine, I've even felt at times that why am I having to do this job, or why am I having to do that job? It seems like such a small thing. And again, David's still trying to wrap his head around the fact that he was anointed to be a king, and he's still probably trying to figure everything out. I don't know why the thing's vibrating, nothing's showing up. Anyway, nothing. He's trying to wrap his head around what he's going to do, and he's going out there and he's carrying the food out to them. And as he goes out there, he's probably got a lot of time to ponder. And he probably figures, you know what? There's no sense in being mad over going out and taking the food to my brothers. At least I'm not out tending the sheep right now. So he goes and he takes the food and delivers and does what he's supposed to. And he hears the giant. And when he hears the giant, when he hears Goliath, I suppose he's a little curious as to why nobody's gone out to fight him. I mean, there's a whole army. Surely they could get one person to go out and fight this giant. But I think, this is just me, but I think what had happened is the children of Israel got their eyes on the enemy and not on what they could actually do. They looked at the giant that was in front of them, and it looked like the Red Sea, and they didn't know how to get across. They didn't know how to defeat him, and they stood there and they just listened. But how many times do we, as Christians, come up against a situation, be it great or be it small? God's worked many, many miracles for each and every one of us in our lives. I mean, we have been healed. We have been delivered. We have been set free.
Glory.
We've been filled with the Holy Ghost.
Glory.
Most of us have been slain in the Spirit. I've seen it right here. You know, God has used us to pray for people. God has used us to lead people back to the Lord. God has used us in mighty, mighty ways. And yet we come up against a little problem and we tend to focus on the problem and forget about everything else. We get caught up in the situation that we're in right now. I have been guilty of that many, many times. I'll get into a situation and think, how in the world did I get here and how in the world am I going to get out? It just don't add up, God. I'm doing everything you asked me to do, God, and yet I'm here. Why is this not working out? And I'm quite sure that that's where Israel was at. And it's like their leaders were dumbfounded and didn't know what to do. Well, here comes this teenager, and I love it. I love young kids. But, you know, teenagers, they know everything anyway.
Oh.
Yeah, well, David hears this giant, and he's like, why are y'all not doing something about this? Don't you know whose army you are?
Come on.
And they're like, well, if we go out there, he's going to defeat us. And David's kind of like, you don't know that. And they're like, well, he said, I'll go out and fight him. I'm not afraid.
Come on.
And I like that about him. Yeah, sometimes teenagers don't make a whole lot of sense, but sometimes it's that boldness that gets them through. Sometimes it's that boldness that'll lead the whole family to victory. You know? But he was there and he's like, look, you're going to let this guy defile the armies of the Lord and you're not going to do nothing about it? Well, here, let me go. And they were like, well, all right. Nobody else was volunteering. Well, it had been 40 days, I believe. And nobody else was volunteering. And here's David. And he's like, I'll go. And I don't know what was running through his mind, but I just wonder if in the back of his mind he was thinking, you know what? I was anointed to be king. If I'm going to be a king, I'm not going to lose today, because if I lose today, I can't be king. So he put two and two together and he's like, I'll do it. And they're like, all right, well, here's this shield, here's all these weapons and all this stuff. David goes, I don't know how to use any of this stuff. But let me tell you what I do know how to use. He said, when I was out tending the sheep, the lion and the bear came at me. And I took this rock, my rock, and a sling, and I reared back and I conked that thing in the head and killed it and saved the sheep. Killed the lion, killed the bear.
Glory.
If I can do that, I can kill this giant. He's no better than them.
Yeah.
He breathes in, he breathes out, he walks on his two legs. He's no different than anything else. He's just another obstacle. If only we could get it in our lives and in our heads that the things that come against us are just another obstacle in life's journey, we could see a whole lot more victories.
Amen.
We could hear a whole lot more shouting. And so here I am, I'm looking at David, and he's like, forget all this stuff. I'm going to use what I know. And he goes over and he finds the stones, and he didn't know if he was going to need one. He didn't know if he was going to need 5. He didn't know if the 5 that he found were going to do the job. He put them in his script or in his little pouch. And they were there, so he picked them up. And he didn't know exactly how God was going to give the victory. He just knew God was going to give it. And you know, there's a lot of times that I've been going through things and I'm thinking, Lord, I don't know how the victory's going to come, but I know it's going to come. You told me it would. I'm going to stand on that, and I'm going to see my salvation. I'm going to see my victory. And that's what David was doing. And so he goes out there and he's going up against Goliath. Of course, you know Goliath. He's running his mouth again, and he kind of thinks it's amusing that a kid went out to do battle against him and was running his mouth, and of course it did faze David a bit. You know, I look at these guys that do all this, these X Games and all that stuff, and they get on these motorcycles and they turn them sideways and flip them around and jump off and hold on to the handlebars and come back down on there and land and ride right on off and all that. And I think, y'all, that's impossible to do. Y'all just don't realize it. And I think that's what it is. Nobody told them it was impossible, or if they did, they didn't listen.
One teenager does.
But that's exactly my point. Maybe we should learn a little something here about this. Maybe we should say, you know what? I don't care if nobody's ever done it before. If God's bringing me this way, He's going to bring me through. He got me here for a reason.
Amen.
Don't tell me I can't win. I know I can. And I dare say that I know David knew he was going to win, but I can just imagine getting out there on the battlefield and looking up and up and up and up and up and saying, Lord, does this guy ever end? And he's standing there and he's being made fun of.
That's it.
His hand might have even been a little shaky as he reached in to grab that rock. He didn't know for sure if it was a rock that was going to kill the giant or what. He just knew what he knew how to use. See, if we would just use what God has provided for us, what we know how to use, God will make up the difference. He wasn't asked to use anything he didn't know how to use. We are prayer warriors. We have seen mighty moves of God. We have seen victory after victory after victory won. We have seen people healed that shouldn't have been healed. We have seen we have seen people come to the Lord we never thought would ever darken the doors of the church. And yet they come in. So we need to use what we've been given and what we know how to use. That's what David did. And he got that old sling and he started slinging it around. And you know, it takes a talent to know how to use those things. And you know, it's just like with anything. If you falter just a little bit, that rock can go any number of ways. And yes, he had a lot of experience, but even experienced people miss.
Right.
And he sat there, and I can just imagine Goliath standing there, watching him put a rock in a sling and start running it around. Goliath probably started running his mouth. What do you think they're going to do with that rock? And David just keeps winding.
Come on.
And then he said, the Lord has delivered me from the lion and from the bear, and he's going to deliver this uncircumcised Philistine to me.
Amen.
And he lets that old rock go, and it hits him right between the eyes. The giant falls over. Verse 50. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. And the end of this verse. But there was no sword in the hand of David. So what's he going to do? Is he going to trust that the rock actually killed him? Or did it just knock him out?
Come on.
David didn't have a sword. David didn't have this book here. He didn't have the Bible here to read verse 51 to see what happened next. He didn't have verse 51. He had his knowledge. He looked around and saw what was around him. Verse 51 says, Therefore David ran, and he stood upon a Philistine, and he took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the thing that gets me, and I love it, I get tickled every time I think about it, how many times has Satan been defeated with his own weapon?
Come on.
Goliath got defeated with his weapon. And how many times has Satan tried to come against us only for God to turn around what the devil meant for evil, God turned it for the good, and he defeated the enemy with the very thing the enemy was coming against us with. He get the enemy all confused about what's going on. They start killing each other.
Come on.
You know? And I don't guess I'll ever, as long as I live, I don't guess I'll ever forget a dream. I don't remember all of it, but the one part that I remember is the enemy had been fighting, and he had been fighting for a long time. And I was up there at Myers gas station, and I was getting gas. And little black figures, dark figures, no face, no nothing, just a form, was coming around, and they had spears in their hand. And they were coming around, sneaking around, trying to come up against me, and they'd throw a spear, and I stood there. Of course, this is a dream, it's my dream, so I win. But I would catch that spear in midair, turn around and throw it back at that thing, and he'd die.
Come on.
And then the next one would try, and it just went on and on until they quit coming.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's what we need to start doing.
Glory.
We need to start standing that ground, looking at that old giant and say, look, giant, I don't care how big you are.
Come on.
My God's bigger than you are. And the thing that got me about the teenagers and the call was they called and they asked Laura. They said, how far are y'all away from home? Laura goes, why? Well, we need to know if we have to start cleaning yet or not. We've been gone for 3 days already, and they want to know, do we need to start cleaning the house now, or can we wait a little bit longer? Laura said, we're on 51, we're almost home. And all of a sudden, arguments started being heard in the background, and Laura said, y'all better have it done, and I better not hear any arguing when I get home. But just the fact that they did that got me to thinking, that one conversation got me to thinking about David.
Glory.
And got me to thinking about the thoughts that probably ran through his head, and could he put off, how long could he put off doing something?
Come on.
But I couldn't believe that they actually called and said, and said, how far are y'all away from home? Do we still have time to clean up? Oh, they'll kill me when they find out about this. Right?
We'll have it on Facebook.
But the thing, that's what got me about David, though. I got to thinking,
Come on.
just that little phone call got me to thinking about, you know what, David was probably had a lot of similar thoughts. Maybe not about cleaning up or whatever, but, you know, most people, even adults, want to put off stuff as long as they can.
Help us, Lord.
I'm bad about it. If I know we're going on vacation and I'm leaving on Friday morning, sometimes it's Friday morning before I pack. I know it needs to be done. I know it's not going to take me long. And if I would get it done on Thursday, I wouldn't have to rush around Friday. But I put it off. You see, that's the way these kiddos were. How long can we put it off? Well, you know, the Bible says that from everything that I read, that we're not too far away from that trumpet sound.
Amen.
And there's a whole lot of people out there thinking, well, I'm only this old, or I'm only that old, and I could put off going to church until a later day, but we're not promised that. How many people sink down into so much despair because the enemy comes against them, and they haven't given their heart and life to the Lord, and they don't know how to fight the battle? But we know. God's given us the answer. He's even showed us.
Glory.
We've seen it happen. You can't tell me that legs won't grow out and hips straighten themselves. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. Somebody may say it can't be, but I saw it right here, right there on the front row. I watched as it happened. I watched as hips were straightened out and them legs back to the same length, and the pain gone, never to come back again.
Hallelujah.
You can't tell any of us that tumors don't shrink.
Amen.
We've seen it happen.
That's right.
We've heard the victory reports. We've shouted. We've seen cancer go.
Glory.
Wayne Kirkendall got a new heart.
Yes.
They found a blockage on my stress test, only to do the heart cath, and said my heart and arteries look better than anybody he's seen. Because God don't halfway do something.
Come on.
You know? And yet when these things come against us, we tend to focus on on the battle that we're going through instead of the victories that we've won. God's wanting to remind us one more time. Doesn't matter what battle you're going through. Doesn't matter how much you may be hurting. I laid in bed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I did make it to church Wednesday night, though. I struggled to get here this morning. It was hurting this evening. But I don't hurt nothing near like what I had been now. I didn't give in. I knew if I had give in, the pain wouldn't leave. But if I went ahead and did what I was supposed to do, then I would remove anything that would, as far as that I had control of, that would hinder my healing. And you know, we need to just realize that. We don't need to be like these kiddos and say, how much time do I have? It's rather humorous, but yet we all have that same attitude. Maybe it's not towards cleaning the house, the physical house. Maybe it's the spiritual house. Maybe God's just asking us to go and pray for somebody and we hadn't done it yet. You know? Whatever it is, we need to not get caught up, allow ourselves to get caught up in the battle that's at hand. We need to just concentrate on the Lord. We need to not look and see how big Goliath is. We just need to realize that God's delivered us every time so far. And then when the giant falls, we can take his own sword and cut his head off and hold it up. And we can see the victory won. And when the victories do win, I wrote mine down on the rock. I don't want to forget it. I want to be able sometime, if I'm in a battle, I want to go over there and be able to read, well, God did this for me. He can do it again. I don't know why we have to suffer. I really don't. But we do. I don't understand why one is having us to suffer. I don't know why they can't get appointments. I have no idea. But I do know that between now and when she can get in, my God can take that pain away. My God can reach down and touch, and I do know that she believes that.
Yes, she does.
So we just need to stand in the gap alongside her, and she will get through this battle, and then she'll have testimony when she comes in about how good God is. Amen. I look forward to that. Amen. Well, that's all I got for you tonight. Just a little lighthearted, at the same time, there's a message there too. Amen. Well, let's stand.
Glory, glory, glory.
Let's be dismissed.